Welcome. Good to see you.
Great to see you, and thanks for having me. As I said to you last week, I'm not sad that it took so long. I'm more just grateful that I've finally been invited in to your new magic showroom.
Your exact words were, even though I'm sad it took so long, I'm overwhelmed with joy to be invited on.
You're
Now,
always so prepared.
my
No, it is
ego's
great. It is great to be here.
my ego's so big. I didn't think you were being ironic there. I took that as
No,
That's about
that's legit.
that's
You
about
know
right.
that everything I say is complete, genuine, from the heart.
I know. Are you having a nice summer?
I'm having a lovely summer, thank you. Yeah, we went away on holidays last week for some sunshine. Um, and I know we're sort of kids at a similar sort of age, and the difference now going on holidays with a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old is worlds apart. So I really enjoyed that.
Terrible twos is a very unfair characterization. A lot of fun
Seen a
too.
bit of it. I've seen a bit of it.
But there's a lot of fun in there. Come on.
No, it is great fun because you don't necessarily get all the fun in the first year. You're sort of they're giving you nothing back. So no, it's great. Really good summer. And a few golfing trips now coming up, July, August time. Got a rugby trip with some of the retired, washed up boys. And then I do one with my dad and two brothers as well, which is really nice.
Oh, nice.
So a bit of Cork, a bit of Kerry, some of the great courses we have on offer.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's a good summer. And you're working away because someone actually in the office the other day said, does he work, does, like the job? Because people know about the pubs thing. Does he have a job? And I was like, he does. What does he do? And I would say this about quite a lot of people I know. It's like, I don't know, like finance, business, meetings, Excel sheets, you know yourself, something in an office. He does that kind of thing. That's vaguely where you are.
I think so. I'm still trying to figure it out myself in terms of what. No, so I work part time in a investment house in Dublin.
Okay.
Through
Investment house. That's what I should
investment
say.
house.
Yeah.
It's just it's simpler and easier to say, isn't it? Elkstone, and yeah, we've got the pubs, but I do very little with the pubs. I've joined the World Rugby Executive Board now this year, so there's quite a bit of work with that, bit of traveling, lots of reading, and then still have a few sponsors, do some corporate things. So a nice mix array of things. Some weeks can be super busy, other weeks can be a little bit more quiet.
Yeah.
And it's nice just to nip off home or collect Bobby from creche early or
Well,
play some golf.
yeah. Well, I always get the sense anytime I talk to you that you're really enjoying being a dad, and that's kind of big priority. When you're doing the 4 days in the office, are you kind of what does that mean? Because you've obviously missed out on the first 15 years, or are you pretty much up to speed with it now, and you feel like I'm enjoying this, I'm good at it?
No, I think I'm always going to have that element of not fully knowing what's going on. If you're getting into the really expertise level of it, so the company I work with, they're sort of their venture capital, their real estate, and a bit of wealth management. I'm never going to be an expert on any of those, but my role now, the title is chief of staff, so it's very much around been a link between the managing directors and the CEO and a bit of culture stuff and team, and so you're still able to. Well, I'm still able to use an awful lot of the skills that I picked up from 15, 20 years of sport.
Chief of staff is what Sexton was.
Before he jumped. Yeah, so
I've
it's
never seen a guy who was more definitely going to jump in all my life.
I know, but I think he wanted to take the year
Yeah.
to himself. Well, for a few reasons, but to prove to people that he didn't want to go to coaching, and then so he could get back into it.
So obviously, chief of staff is something they sort of think, yeah, that could fit your profile.
Yeah, and it's something that's becoming an awful lot more common in business now too, as well.
Okay.
And it's a good fit for people like me who don't have a real expertise skill set at something that you can just do lots of little different things without being good at anything.
And how are you with retirement from sport at this stage? How many years now?
Coming up to 3 years.
3. Okay. Where are you on that?
Really good.
Right.
I consider myself genuinely blessed at how, I'm not going to say easy the transition has been, but how comfortable I've been with it. And there's lots of different factors for that. First and foremost, I went professional when I was 19 and I retired when I was 35. So that is a brilliant longevity career to have been able to gotten. Not very few people get to do it for that long,
You
finish
weren't-
on their own terms.
You weren't shortchanged in that respect.
No, and I think that's a big part of it, that you can sort of, that I could leave the game feeling as if it had given me so much. My body was breaking down too, so I did get the opportunity to do a second year in Australia with Western Force, but I just couldn't do it anymore. So then that makes it easier again too, when there was something on the table, but you just physically and mentally aren't able to go there again. And then again, I consider myself, very fortunate, lucky that I started preparing for the life after rugby quite early in my career too. So I did have different options when I stepped off the rugby field. And again, not every player has that. So then there's, that's why I feel, fortunate from that perspective too.
Yeah, great. Kind of interesting. Fatherhood happens and coincides with that. Take your mind off things.
Yeah, it does, and it wasn't by design. But when I was playing rugby, I was always, very conscious that this is everything. And some guys are able to start families and be dads, and it is amazing, but it's an extra stress and an extra pressure. And I got married the week after I retired. So you very distinctively close one big chapter in your life and then open another one. And then becoming a dad, it gives you another. Well, it's the biggest purpose you'll ever have in your life. And when I was retiring initially, that purpose was the biggest thing gnawing away at me. You get out of bed every single day with one sole objective: to be a better rugby player. And then that stops, and it's a big void. So that's where being a dad was brilliant, to be able to replace that purpose.
Yeah. Now you just don't sleep at all.
He's a great sleeper.
Is he?
Touch wood.
And I saw, and congrats, by the way, I saw a little announcement. Number 2 happening.
On the way.
All of that.
The wheels keep on turning.
Jeez, okay. So that's kind of, life's good then, I guess.
Life's great.
Grateful for.
Yeah.
So the line starts tomorrow, Friday night officially, and then it's a month until the first test, and I guess it's going to be one of these things that we'll all talk about. So that was what made me think of you, because I'd never really talked to you about your Lions experiences in any depth, and the '09 one in particular feels very vivid in my memory. So I guess that's the purpose of the chat, really. In '09, short version, you were 23 years of age. Ireland have just won the Grand Slam. You've done your little Enfield thing, calling out the Munster boys. You've just won a Heineken Cup with Leinster and then picked for the Lions. So this looks like beautiful, life is good kind of a situation. You said in your book, which I just had a look at again today, that you always really enjoyed touring right the way through your career. You said the Lions tour of 2009 of South Africa stands out above all others. So this is your number one, basically.
Yeah, it is. And, the book was 3 or 4 years ago. As I still look back now on all my touring days, that stands out as the most enjoyable. And there was still very much an element of the old school way with it. And then when Ian McGeechan is the boss man too, he has that old school in his DNA. At the very first night that we arrived in South Africa, there was no WhatsApp, so I don't know if there was even text messages. I think we might have all communicated by email. But an email came in from me and McGeechan saying, boys...
Was it geeks54@gmail.com?
Each 1920. He said, boys, I'm going down to the bar for a couple of beers if anyone wants to come and join me. And then all the doors and the car door opened up. And I was like, is this a joke? Is he taking the piss or is it a test? And then slowly one person went down after the other. And we stayed in the bar for 5-6 hours, everyone just getting on the piss.
That's a real, this is going to be fun.
Amazing. And I don't care what people say, the best way to form a bond and a relationship is over a couple of pints. And I didn't have the luxury of, so they were in England in Penny Hill Park for a week training before that. And we had the Heineken Cup final. So we were late getting in there. So we missed out on that. And that's a really big week. And the same applies this time for the Leinster lads. They've missed out on a big week. But just from the very first moment we all got together, there's something so special and unique about it.
Yeah. Well, for me, we're similar ages. I just remember the '05 tour. I give you the shudders. Even like it was just dark and miserable and no fun. And '01, I don't know, it passed me by some. I don't know what I was doing that summer. Um, so I really went on a journey with that '09 team from afar. It's a funny thing. Like I've no tour subsequently or before I've kind of enjoyed as much from afar. But it seemed like it was a very deliberate reaction to '05 that they realized it had been sort of too professional and too clinical under Woodward. And he had brought in things like, well, you're all going to have individual bedrooms for better sleep. And to this day, Clive Woodward, if you mention that to him, because I did in an interview a while back, he rolls his eyes and he said, "Oh yeah,
That's
we
the
lost the
reason.
Lions tour because I wanted them to sleep well. I mean, would you prefer to have a roommate or would you prefer to sleep well?" And I was like, "Well, no, sleep well." And yet, this anachronistic kind of weird intangible with the Lions is, yeah, but you make great
Yeah,
friends.
it's all those little things, a combination of when you put them all together. Because if you don't have a bond and a friendship and a togetherness of building that team really quickly, you haven't a chance.
And they seem to return to that consciously in '09. It was like, we're going back to, it's McGeechan,
Old school.
it's the Lions.
Yeah.
Send
I think in '05, didn't different teams travelled off?
he brought like 50 odd. So there were the is it the dirt trackers? Is that what?
Yeah,
Yeah. So like they were just on a separate bus, separate schedule. There are guys who like, yeah, no, I never saw Rob the whole tour,
yeah,
which is the antithesis of what it's supposed to be.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And did you go there? So when you arrive just before you get that first email to come down for drinks, how are you feeling about the whole thing? You like, I belong here, Grand Slam winner, Heineken Cup winner, still pretty young, but yeah, I'm ready for this.
Living a dream, and because it all happened so quickly, Grand Slam first one in 67 odd years, and the country, like, it wasn't like the last few Grand Slams. The country went
No,
absolutely mental for this, rivaled with Italia 90.
it was so big. Yeah,
And then Leinster go and win their first Heineken Cup, and then a Lions announcement. So it's just one incredible thing coming after the other.
and it's worth stating as well the extent to which you're living the dream. Meanwhile, all your mates your age are like enduring the teeth of the worst recession in our
Yeah,
lifetime. Like it's
yeah,
you're in this lovely bubble. Like it's extra dreamy.
yeah, yeah. Um, when I look back on it now, I was, in some respects, I was very lucky to have made the plane in 2009. Um, we played Harlequins in the quarterfinal in that Bloodgate game, which I think was early April. And I came in after the game on the Monday morning. My face had swollen up, and Felipe Contaponi looked at me and goes, "Mate, you need to go home. You are sick."
And he's a doctor.
And he's a doctor. So went to the doctor, got it checked out. Anyway, I had a severe, severe case of the mumps. Um, Fast forward a couple of weeks, I was in Blackrock Clinic for 2.5 weeks. Like, I was genuinely very, very sick. And Gary O'Driscoll, who was the Lions team doctor, phoned me when I was in Blackrock Clinic, and he said, "Mate, what's sort of going on? How's the health? How's the fitness?" And I told him the full story. And I think if I didn't have Gary was the Irish team doctor for the years before then. If I didn't have a good relationship with him, because he batted for me, he said, "Okay, this doesn't sound great, but I won't give Geach the full story and tell him you'll be good to go around tour time." If that was nowadays, I might not have. You might have been pulled because I didn't play again. I didn't play again for Leinster except for 6 minutes in the final.
Oh,
So I went 3 months almost without playing any rugby.
I don't remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Missed the game in Croke Park against Munster.
Did you?
Yeah.
God, I've completely forgotten all that. Right.
So I didn't. I played very little rugby. I think I lost 7 or 8 kilos in that time. And this is the other sort of bizarre thing about 2009. When I look back on those games, okay, I'm sure you'll get into the second test and the performance and that, but there was nothing in the 3-4 months lead up to that to suggest that I was going there in any sort of half decent form.
Okay.
So I do look back on that tour and say, Christ, I was very lucky. I was very lucky to have gotten on the plane from a health physical standpoint. And then I was very lucky to produce a performance like that when there was nothing to suggest that I should have.
Interesting. What do you put it down to?
I don't know. Is there an element of luck in it? You know, some days things just go your way. Is there, you know, is there some? I love the big days. I always enjoyed, you know, the more people watching, the more cameras, whatever comes with the bigger day. I sort of got not more up for them, but it didn't seem to affect my. It had a positive performance on my performance,
Yeah.
as opposed to a negative one.
So, you know, there's that nice start of the tour where it's going to be drinks and God, this is relaxed and your time is yours and have fun. It seems like the whole thing was laid out beautifully though in '09. In that I've heard players talk about how, again, you couldn't do it in New Zealand with the weather, but in South Africa, the gym is kind of outdoor next to the pitch, so everyone's together all the time. There's the, you know, who's the Welsh? How have I forgotten his name?
Bobby,
Long-haired, front row, now part of the
Adam
coaching
Jones.
ticket. Adam Jones, yeah. O'Connell always says that Adam Jones said, I gave up the drink for 6 months to come on this tour, and now all I do is drink.
There was an unbelievable relationship with the Irish and Welsh on that tour, and I think it is inherent in all the other tours. There's something about the Irish and Welsh that they just seem to get on very, very well.
Okay. So was it fun? Like, it was fun?
It was fun. Yeah, it was fun. I trained hard. Because again, it was old school training too. So you'd be on the pitch twice a day, and
Right.
you'd be doing physical contact and bone on bone, which wouldn't necessarily happen nowadays. A lot more care for players, time on field. You never go over 80 minutes. So training was tough.
And this is the best of the best in training. So was this is a level above Irish training, I presume?
Oh, it was a real level above. And again, this, you know, the very first pitch session you have, you notice just the quality of passing just sharper, the speed of everything just a little bit quicker, but it makes everyone, and it brings players up another level again. And then you sort of you want to impress the people around you, so you find that little bit more within yourself. It just has this unique ability to bring the best out in players.
Who impressed you in training?
You put me on the spot now.
Lee Byrne was very good.
Lee Byrne.
Come to that.
Lee Byrne was awesome, and when we met in Pennyhill Park, we had to go over to Pennyhill Park on the Monday of the Heineken Cup final and check. It was like, no, those boys are not going. Feck the Lions, yada yada, and Mick Dawson. And I don't know how it happened, but we ended up getting a private jet out of Dublin Airport.
Like I said, everyone, there was a big recession. It was tough times.
Oh God, even worse. But anyway, I was chatting to Lee Byrne, and he goes, "Oh, you're only in for the day. You've got the Heineken Cup final at the weekend." And he looked at me and said, "Are you starting?" I said, "No, I'm on the bench." And he goes, "Oh, that's weird." And then straight away, I was like, "You bollocks, you've won up on me already." It was just a look that he gave me.
And you two were really the only designated 15s.
The only two.
It's a real mano a mano.
There wasn't really any other players who. Keith Earls did play because I got injured. I got a dead leg in one of the games, and Lee Byrne was been saved for the first test. So Earlsy did go in at 15, but it was a 2-horse race.
Yeah. Okay.
And do you know what? I look back on that. We had no relationship together at all. We didn't even really speak on that whole tour. And there was two of us in it. You know, and there was never anything edgy or bad blood or anything between us.
No one made the first move to soften it, though.
No.
Because I read in your book, you did spiral sessions after training. So maybe 20, 25 minutes, kicking spirals to each other. No talk, no great atmosphere. Just silent death stare spirals to each other.
Yeah, and we were at altitude as well, so we were both pinging them 60, 70 on the fly, and then he'd say, "Go back 5 meters," and then I'd say, "Go back 6 meters."
That's a real, let's see what you got, kid.
Yeah, but it was good because it drove us both on.
You didn't find it stressful?
No, I didn't because I went over there with no expectations of. I knew I wasn't going to be starting.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. Um,
You described being in the gym, um, doing your prehab, and looking out the window, approaching the first test, and Lee Byrne is there with all the photographers, and he's holding up the 15 jersey, smiling as in he's in. And you talk about almost that moment, remembering it very vividly, as in I don't think I've ever wanted a jersey more in my life.
I still have the image so clear in my head.
And you knew he'd been named at that stage. I presume that's not how you found out he was starting.
No, no, that was the press after the
Grand.
team was named.
A tough way to let you know.
No, yeah, they weren't that ruthless.
Yeah.
But I knew I'd get a chance. Lee had a habit of going down in games and getting injured and picking up knocks, like for years before that. So I did know deep down that I would get some sort of an opportunity.
Because I know Rob Howley sat the two of you down in advance of naming the team and said, listen, guys, it really is nip and tuck. And you sort of thought, well, I have a fair idea who's ahead in this one. But they named you on the bench, and you could only cover one position. So that would suggest they liked the cut of your jib or saw plenty in you, know?
Yeah, maybe, but I don't think that they had seen enough from me. Like, it would have been a much safer play to put a utility back on the bench. Now, I had played on the wing for Ireland in 2007 and 8, so I did have a bit of wing experience.
Were you tearing it up in training?
No.
Okay.
Not to my memory. Now, the week before that, I'm sure I can tell the story now, so many years on. Luke Fitzgerald was rooming with Lee Byrne. And Lee Byrne was showing Luke something on his phone, a video or something like that. And a message from Rob Howley came in while Luke was holding the phone saying you're in for the first test.
Okay.
And this is a week out from the first test.
The Welsh Mafia.
So I don't know if Rob Howley sat us down after that. Maybe that's why I was...
Guys, it's so close.
You're pulling my leg here, Rob.
Okay, so that's just, a week out, but you're not shocked, and but it's good to be on the bench. So I guess
I'm
feeling
ecstatic to be on the bench, and I'm probably surprised to be on the bench.
Okay. So you don't on that bus to the stadium, Durban. You're not a disappointed 23-year-old on the bench for the Lions. You're like, great.
I'm chuffed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Willie John presented the jerseys.
Willie John presented the jerseys.
Pretty cool.
Unbelievable. And again, because I'm still living this fairy tale of a year that, this is just another thing. This must be what the Lions do. But the tension and the prestige and the history and the emotion within the room was wow. There's only a few other, Geach for the third test, similar. And then Paulie before the 2015 quarter-final, the night before that game. Are three that stand out as, wow, this isn't normal.
Yeah. Willie John's still a big man as well.
Big man, big hands.
Yeah,
it's the thing that caught me off guard. It was like the shovels.
So like it's South Africa, Lions comes around every 12 years. 97 was the last time. I presume like drive to stadium, the atmosphere around the day. Like my memory of that tour is like the skies are impossibly blue. It's so colourful. I presume that is visceral, going to the stadiums on the bus.
Yeah, it is. But the South Africans they're hardcore too, so they're not afraid to shout at you and throw their cans at the bus and give you the bird and call you this and call you that.
Is that intimidating or like, who cares?
No, it sort of brings you together a little bit too. It's kind of,
we're going to war.
Kind of galvanizing. It's a bit like the haka as well. The first few times I faced the haka, I was shitting myself. By 7, 8, 9, 10, you're like, let's go.
Mm. Yeah.
So it definitely did have that effect, and it's brilliant when you're in a team bus with 40 other people, so you all just rally together a little bit more.
Mm.
And then the anthems for that first, the stadium of the first test was, because the South African stadiums, they're built so high and they're right on top of you, and the amount of red in the stadium, did make you feel a little bit more at home-ish.
Who were the big voices or the leaders in that '09 group? Say on the bus, being pelted. Is anyone talking in the dressing room? Who's kind of taking charge? Who do you remember as being vociferous?
Paulie was very big. Phil Vickery had a big voice. Mike Phillips, Andy Powell. There was so many of them. There was a lot of really big characters. And there was a huge mutual respect as well. Particularly between the Welsh and the Irish. Now, I'm not sure how many. From memory, I don't think there was too many English players in the first 15, which is probably why in my head now I'm thinking it was very Irish-Welsh sort of tour. And then you've got Brian as well, who was always very vocal. And Gats was very vocal even as an assistant coach. Geach was a little bit more quiet. Sean Edwards, amazing. Like the energy that he would bring, get you properly fired up for it.
If you stay down in a defensive line, your leg better be broken.
Yeah. He said that in the very first week. It just sets a tone. Sets a tone.
It's hard to stay down after that.
Then you're down, and that's the first thing that comes into your head.
Really?
You're like, I got to get back up here.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Game starts, Lee Byrne injured 38 minutes. Oh, God. You talked about Rog being next to you on the bench.
Yeah, just come back to me again now. Rog was huge for me because you need that at that moment in time.
Support.
And again, I'm 23, so O'Gara is an icon, a hero in my eyes then. And if he's saying, fuck, you're ready for this, you're able for it, go out and do it, that's just the G up you need.
And he's quite, I don't know, clearly, I don't know him as well as you. I don't know him that well, but even just little bits where he would have offered encouragement during the TV stuff, he's quite, in a good way, like forceful. He's quite you fucking get on with it then, kind of a way.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I'm sure that's what makes him such a good coach as well. Rog has had unbelievable bottle. His mental strength was right up there.
He's tough.
Yeah.
So he said, "Get your tracksuit off." Fucking there.
In you go.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant having those 2 minutes before halftime.
Just to taste it.
Just to taste it, and I had one positive involvement just before the half. So then you're settled in, everything's okay.
And you grab
come back
breath.
in for halftime. You can take it all in. You can sort of experience what it's all about, and then recenter yourself, and out you go again.
Yeah. So that was a game where Lions way down, come back, could have won it. Like an amazing game. Forgotten a little bit because of the second game, which was, overshadowed it in Pretoria. But that game in Durban, it was a great game. And you did well in that second half. That you were like, okay. You said in your book afterwards, I thought this is the ultimate level.
Yeah. It was sort of, it was a step above a World Cup match or an international test match in November. There was more to it. Not just you take in all the factors, the intensity of the game, the collisions, the crowd, the atmosphere, the importance, the history. It was peak.
So you must think then, Lee Byrne hurt his thumb. He's technically in contention for the second test, but you felt in the box seat and you get the nod for the second test. You're starting.
Yeah, I think he went down initially with his foot.
Right.
Something wrong with his foot. And then something happened to his thumb too. But he was available for selection the following week. And yeah, I got
Rob Howley texted you.
did he?
No,
No,
no, I'm
no.
joking.
Um,
He only texted Lee. I definitely didn't
he
text
only
you.
texted Lee. No, so yeah, I was named in the test team for the second test. Was I surprised? No, I don't think I wasn't surprised
Because you'd played really well.
because I played well
Yeah.
and he was injured and you shouldn't really be available for selection on a Monday if you're coming off after 37 minutes 3 or 4 days before that.
Yeah. Not if you were playing the Sean Edwards school.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So this second test, talk to us. Like just one of the great games. This is one of like still. This is just one of the greatest games a lot of us have ever seen. Ferocious. This is the game where O'Driscoll concusses himself. This is like
This is the
eye,
game
eye
where
gouging. This is everything.
this is the game where nowadays, and they did this recently last year or the year before, by current rugby laws, there's 4 red cards and 13 yellow cards. So this second test will go down in history as one of the great rugby matches
Yeah.
from that element of collision and battle and everything that rugby is meant to be, that we've moved away from for all the right reasons. We've moved away,
Yeah.
but the game still has to celebrate what it is to its core.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to talk about because you don't want to like celebrate the and then they banged heads and then they banged heads because we're seeing maybe a consequence of that now, guys of that generation, and the game has changed. But on its terms at the time, certain innocence. This is before CTE has been
Mm.
talked about and everything. You could almost watch it without at the back of your mind thinking, "Oh my God, this is wrong." So it held that space. It was right at the before the door. A bit like how you're saying it was the last old school tour. Almost like the last old
Yeah,
school kind of Lions match in a
and I
way.
think it'll always hold that prestige as well with it.
Yeah.
You know, of what rugby used to be.
For better or worse. I mean, as a spectacle, probably people would be more thrilled by it. Player safety, less so. But for better or worse,
Of
what it
course.
used to be. Yeah.
Well, for worse, like player safety has to be number one.
Yeah.
And back in 2009, there wasn't the same medical and scientific research that there is now.
Mm.
So we do know, but we will always look back at that type of game with a fond memory.
Yeah. So what are your memories of playing in it?
The amount of high balls they kicked,
It was insane.
it was insane. And you know, I don't want to overuse the word lucky, but if the best thing that I was able to do as a rugby player was fielding, and then you're on the biggest stage, and the opposition are doing to you exactly what you want them to do. If we're playing against the All Blacks, they don't kick that much ball. So sort of you getting dealt really good cards on the day. And when I look back, it was just one of those days where everything went perfectly well,
Mm.
and it wasn't. I don't know how many games I played, 350 odd. There's very few times when you are genuinely in the flow.
Oh, you'd class that. I was in a state of flow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I could count on one hand the amount of games where I was in the flow.
Right.
Um,
I got your book here. So this is more flowery than it's harder to. What do you say? Everything seemed easier than it should have been. It was one of those days when you just didn't make mistakes. It doesn't even occur to you that you can make a mistake. The process of making decisions was barely a process for me, just an instinct like breathing. Things were coming off for me every time. I was kicking the spirals, I was making the catches, I was getting the right bounces, I was taking the high balls, I was looking forward for every involvement. You said, I took a catch on my own 22 that I should have marked, but I didn't mark. And this was just 3 or 4 minutes into the game. But I went off and made a 30, 40-metre counter-attack and brought us into their half of the field. I don't know where that came from. You said, years later, I heard that Forey Dupreez, the South African scrum half, gathered his team around him in the second half and told them, stop kicking the ball to the fullback. Thankfully, though, they continued, which is true. And one last one was you seem to remember I kicked a spiral Garryone at one stage. That's something you might do in training. I would have never tried that in a game before, but that afternoon in Pretoria, I was somebody else. Jeez,
The
that's
joy of a good ghostwriter.
yeah, yeah.
Well done, David Walsh.
But that tallies, that
That does
captures
tally, yeah.
Yeah.
Spirals were just coming off so perfectly sweet off the outside of the foot.
All that practice with Lee.
All that practice with Lee, breaking tackles. The mark in the own 22. I remember Gethin Jenkins looking at me. He said, "Mate, what the fuck are you doing? Mark the ball."
But you were just, I feel good, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know what that is. Like if you could bottle it up, you're onto something.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, without trying to, maybe I'm still trying to work it out in my own head. Like, is there a huge amount of luck in it as well that just, players get those days, very few in their career. And why did I get to experience that on that day?
Mm.
I'm still trying to figure it out. All these years later, I don't have an answer.
Yeah. Because Graham Simmons was there for Sky, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because bearing in mind the Lions lose this in horrific, heartbreaking fashion. Raj, the kick and chase, the penalty, it's brutal. And yet Graham Simmons in the Sky interview was like, "Rob, was that 80 minutes of rugby perfection?" That will tell people who didn't see the game what we're talking about here. And you're like, "No, gosh, no. We lose as a team, we win as a team."
I know. And you do mean it, of course. But it is nicer after a huge loss like that, when, not that you're not the person responsible, because no one's ever responsible, but when you've done your bit,
of course, yeah,
to play well.
Yeah. I don't think anyone would think that's strange. You're definitely feeling a lot better than Raj did that night. It's just obvious,
just human nature.
Yeah. You talked as well about like that game coming on later, Sky Sports kind of showing it again and watching it while you were still playing, actually, and going, "God, I don't recognize that kid."
It was fat.
Well, yeah, okay. There's that, but the carefree, I'm having a cut here versus the percentage player the percentages professional in the kind of true sense of the word you became. 51% defender, 49% attacker.
And that's youth too. And
yeah,
it's the game getting more professional and getting harder to winning, and coaching getting better, and percentage play, etc., etc.
But the carefree aspect.
The carefree aspect, but should I have taken that further into the latter end of my career? But then, do you stop getting picked, or does your place become under more threat in the team? When I look back now, I was dropped once for Ireland. So I was always, and Joe was the coach, and Joe had a bit of a soft spot for me. But I think he always sort of would have put me one of the first names down just for the safety and solidity and that 51% defender.
It is surprising that they kept kicking to you, though, to go back to that point, because you were just, it was like dominance, and you'd shown them what you could do in the air in the first test, and the second test starts off in a similar vein, and they just kept on kicking it to 15. Even after Foy Dupree's in the huddle said, "Stop doing that."
Yeah, but maybe they don't have a plan B, or maybe they still, like, I'm a nobody coming on this tour too. I'm a young kid. Let's keep testing him. He'll drop one of them, and then we'll get into him.
Yeah, and say an hour in, they might have said, "Look, he's dropping one." But listen, it's not your question.
No, and that's it's every international team has a DNA in terms of how they play, and that's very much within South Africa's one.
What was the relationship like between South Africa and the Lions on the pitch there?
It was pretty mouthy. It wasn't great.
Right.
And there wasn't even any beers after the game. After the third test, there was a couple of beers. Now, after the second test, we were absolutely, so distraught.
Have you ever watched the footage from the documentary of that second test dressing room afterwards?
No,
I mean, you were there, so you don't need to. Ooh, it was heavy. So quiet.
eerie.
And
Jeez, it's over.
Raj,
It's done.
hands buried in his head. Like, you just feel so sorry for him. He's probably concussed those final few minutes. But Sean Edwards looks like,
Frothing.
it's a funeral. No, he's devastated.
Oh.
He's not even angry. He was frothing. There's footage of him saying, get out. But once it's in the dressing room afterwards, ooh, it's heavy.
That series should have gone to a third test.
Yeah.
Because the first test, we had opportunities to score even late in the game in the second half to get back into it. We put ourselves in a position to win it. We gave them such a soft, easy start in the first 20 minutes. We weren't on it for the first quarter of the game. But we could have won that first test, and then we threw it away in the second test. And it's not Roger's fault, like.
Oh no.
You look at him point to Tommy as well before the Gary goes up.
He signals it's coming.
Yeah, and it's very unusual that the person who kicks the Gary on is going to go and contest it. So, and we all could have done. Different things.
Lions obviously won the third test. Do you remember that bit? I see that one from afar. It's less important, and it's kind of I don't remember it as vividly because it's not that it's irrelevant. But it seemed very important from a Lions point of view. We can't go 3-0 here, or like almost an existential threat to the Lions if we come home 3-0.
Genuinely, and this will sound a bit funny or bizarre to say, I felt more pressure going into the third test than I did the first and second.
Right.
Because of the gauntlet that McGeechan had thrown down to us. This is not about you, the class of 2009. This is about every Lions generation that comes after us. Is this team going to be in existence in 10, 15 years' time? And then the responsibility to the players you had before you who wore the jersey. So it was built up to be much more than just one game.
Okay. And that landed, which you did it, because I can understand how people, especially if they're not rugby fans, sort of roll their eyes about the Lions thing. And yeah, we get it, the four countries, they come together, yada, yada, yada. But when you're in it, when he's talking about those things, that feels very real.
No, it does. And you have to appreciate everyone who's in the room lives and breathes the Lions. There's no cynics in the room about the Lions. And you have Mr. Lion in Ian McGeechan putting it on you guys to protect the legacy and the future of it.
Yeah.
So it was very real.
I don't remember much about the third test. You won it reasonably well.
We won it reasonably, very easily. Now the South Africans didn't. They played a lot of debutants, and their hearts weren't fully in it.
Did that frustrate you guys?
No, because we just needed to get one on the scoreboard.
We'll take it.
We do not want to be the class who have brought this down.
Okay.
So we didn't care at all. In truth, we were probably delighted.
Yes. Okay.
Because we had a load of injuries as well.
Yeah.
I think there was 5 ambulances outside the changing room after the game.
Second test.
God. So we were ripped in terms of personnel.
And after third test, drink with the South Africans, all friends, not especially?
Not especially. I don't remember a huge amount of it. But then we went to a nightclub that night again. Like we gave it a lash after each test. Yeah. And it was encouraged to show up for training the next day.
Okay, I don't want to know what you've been up to.
Go, but just show up, work hard, put the work in. So I do remember after the third test, we were all in the sort of similar place, and we got on. There was no bad blood after it then.
Okay. And that 09's crew, through the trials, the tribulations, losing the 2 tests, the good vibes endured to the end. That was remained a tight group, did it?
Yeah, it did. And even, even when I see some of the guys from 2009 and 2013, I feel a much closer bond to the 2009 group. Now, again, I don't know if that's because I have fonder memories of that tour, but there was something unique about the 2009 group.
Yeah. Well, it felt that way from afar, but it's great, interesting, good to hear that from someone who's there. So that is God, epic, 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 epic. I then, after finishing the '09 chapter in your book, I thought I'll remind myself of 13. There's not a chapter about it, and I had a good route around. I had a good route around. I'm wrong about this. I'm sure there must be a mention of it. I couldn't find a mention of it in the book. I couldn't find a page on the 2013 lines. Now, I could be wrong. I probably had a really good flick in the timeline, and we jumped from 2012 into 14, 15 pretty quickly. So, would that tally with how
It's probably reflective of how
yeah,
I'm feeling.
really?
Polar opposites.
Okay.
Polar opposites.
So 2013, you go and you play 0 tests, 0 of the 3 tests.
Play 0 of the 3 tests. And again, 2013, in truth, I was lucky to have made the plane to Australia.
Oh, so 2012, you're European Player of the Year, Heineken Cup winner, and is it injury 13?
Injury 13, and then back surgery at the start of 13.
Okay.
And we had the Amlin, because we were knocked out of the Heineken Cup. So we had the Amlin League final 2 weeks before. And then the following week, the week before we travelled, we had the Pro 12 final against Ulster. And I pulled out in the warm-up with a hamstring injury.
Okay.
And I just so hated having to pull out, because you never, ever want to be that guy who's perceived as pulling out of your Leinster final to look after yourself to get in the plane the following week.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it was a really difficult decision for me to actually pull the plug on it.
Yeah.
Lions were leaving the following day, so I didn't get a scan. Went to Hong Kong because we were playing a match in Hong Kong. It was the first opportunity I could get to have a scan. So got scanned over there. Grade 1 and a bit tear. Irish doctor, Aina Falvey. Have my back.
Okay, he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. Didn't play for 2 or 3 weeks. Missed four games, first 4 games, and then you're done.
All right, done.
Yeah.
Also, I guess if you were, give us the short version of why he didn't play that tour. Player of the series, Lee Halfpenny. Don't think he missed a kick. That's tough to compete with. He was metronomic. Just phenomenal kicker. So are you, as well as, I'm not playing, so that's not good. When you're watching him take every kick and make every kick, there must be a part of you that was like, I'm screwed here. How do I dislodge that?
Yeah, no, there was. I knew I was on the back foot again, of course, but I hadn't played any games or putting myself in any sort of
position to
say my hand is up here. Okay. My first game was against the Brumbies, and this was the famous match where Gatland called in loads of players from outside the tour. I was meeting 3 people in the back line for the first time at the captain's run the day before the match.
Meeting them, right?
Like, hi, I'm Rob. Nice to meet you. Welcome on tour.
Okay.
Oh, we're playing tomorrow? Yeah.
Okay.
But then that's, you look at Lions tours, what you do in the first 2 or 3 weeks is everything.
Right.
And we have a match on Friday or last Friday, whenever this goes out. Those guys who play well, they're in the driving seat. And you might not have had them in your test side when you're picking it. It's a blank slate when you all come together.
So do you think, well, look, let's have fun. I'm going to have a great time. Or was this like a bit of a slog?
No, it was a bit of a slog. There was still a part of me that thought I'll get a chance, I'll get an opportunity. Lee Halfpenny had played an awful lot on the wing too, and he could still goal kick from the wing.
Okay.
And Tommy Bowe got injured in the last warm-up game, and Tommy was in line to be on the wing. And I remember Jerry had Gatland's ear, some shape or form. He always had the team beforehand.
Okay.
And Jerry had an article in the Irish Times saying Halfpenny moving to the wing, Kearney at fullback.
for one of the tests?
the first test,
Ah.
because Tommy was injured.
Ah, okay.
So then I got my hopes up, and then the next day he did a U-turn and had his. So I called him. I said, "Jerry, come on," because the team hadn't been named yet.
Okay.
But then there's still a part of you that's thinking, because there was only two full backs again. It was me and him, and it's a very specialist position.
Mm.
So you do have to stay on and prepped and ready for. You hope an opportunity will come.
Mm.
I did more goal kicking practice with Johnny on that tour than I've ever done, because I wanted him to kick really well.
Okay, Johnny, you need to start
Yeah.
taking over the kicking, mate. Come on.
Come on, after training, let's go and do some kicking. Normally, I wouldn't care about his kicking. So yeah, it was great to be there. Great to have been involved. Do I consider myself a Lions Tour winner? Not really.
Yeah.
No. But then that's only because I had experienced such highs of what it means to be in the test team in 2009.
Yeah. You did. Yeah. It's hard to compare with that one. What are your memories of the O'Driscoll drop-in third test?
Brian was I was the first person that Brian told. It was very early in the morning. It was 7:30, 8. And he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Because we were all expecting him to be named captain. Not least, well, I'm sure he had a feeling that he might too. And I think Gatlin sent him a text message saying, "I want to speak to you." And Brian thought, okay, here's the good news. Let's go into the third test, captain.
Is that injuries? Is it Warburton or O'Connell?
O'Connell.
Yeah, he broke his arm, didn't he?
And arm, yeah.
Okay, so, yeah.
And it was a weird atmosphere among the group. All the players were shocked. Everyone was shocked. Brian mucked in, to be fair to him. We went out for drinks that night. I sent him a text, "You coming down to the pub for a few pints?" He says, "No, I'm doing video analysis with Jonathan Davies." I replied, "You're a bigger man than me."
Johnny, any more kicking practice? Come on. That's class.
Yeah, it is.
Very easy for him to say, sod all of this, yeah.
I'm going on the beer. Yeah.
Because he knows that's his last chance. This is it. So it's a particular, there's no, I'll be back in 2017. This is...
No, and Twitter and social media was around then.
Yeah.
So we were able to, you could feel the absolute uproar and rage from back home.
Yeah, it's big.
And it leaked into the group a little bit.
Well, if you were I don't know if Gatlin was cognizant of that storm back here. I suspect he was to some extent, but even there's the famous photo, isn't there, at full time, where they bump into each other on the pitch, and Brian is kind of doing a, "Hey, look, I guess you're vindicated," kind of a
Gaddy
thing.
looks so smug.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I interviewed him when he brought out his book, and I had assumed experienced coach. Not that this would have cost him no thought, but this is the way it is. Whereas he was so upset by it, he was in the dressing room for a little while full time on his own, crying. According to his own book, he was really upset by the whole thing.
After the game?
Yeah, it doesn't tally that if he's gone into the dressing room.
I remember that.
Well, you weren't there when he was crying, is the point. It was a private. He had a moment at some stage anyway where the pressure of the week and the shitstorm it had become, and they've won. That relief. There were tears. So
tears of joy, vindication.
Maybe I'm doing him too much of a service there. But I remember from his book anyway, it was he wasn't immune to how controversial a decision it was.
No, but then that's good. Coaches have to make the tough decisions. And in his now, would we have won the test with Brian at 13? Yeah, I think we would have. In hindsight,
that's the thing. Yeah.
But he was picking what he perceived as been the strongest team on the day, and that's the coach's job, and they've got to. Yeah, that's why they're in the hot seat.
Was that as much old school, or you less beers, less out in the town?
No, it wasn't nearly as much old school. It was first stuff, the professional way.
Okay.
We played that first game in Hong Kong. We played poorly enough. Gats gave us a bollocking after the game and put a curfew on everyone of 11 o'clock. We were all looking around.
The '09 crew. What is
This is
this?
the first night of Lions tour. You sure? Curfew? And that sort of set the tone then for
Okay.
the rest of the tour. So there was a huge difference from 2009 to 13 from that side of things.
It's just the way the game was going, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other final overarching thoughts on life as a Lion?
No, like it really is the pinnacle for rugby players. Um, and you'd well, I can't speak for everyone, but I think I would put it ahead representing my country in a World Cup, if that's not an awful thing to say. And I don't know if that's selfish or if it's a little bit sort of more thinking with ego because it's the pinnacle of what you can do individually as a person. But my first memory of rugby was Lions 1997. You know, Guscus drop goal. And then O'Driscoll's try in 2001 with a VCR cassette at home. And I must have watched that try 1,000 times. Rewind, play, rewind, play.
Oh, you beauty.
Yeah. So to have been able to do it and, you know, to be sitting here talking to you today as a Lion, it's as good as it gets. It's very special. It is.
And on the concept, anachronistic as it is, it does seem, in so much as you can kind of read between what's media hype and what's actual interest, it does seem to still be something that hugely resonates, that people are into. There's definitely a quotient in the corner going, "Oh, this guff again," because the hype can be off-putting, and I'm sure when the first test is on, it will capture people. But it does seem not to be in any existential danger. It doesn't look like this is going to be kind of crowbarred out of the rugby calendar anytime soon. Or would you worry for it?
No, I don't think so. Now, it's become highly commercialized.
It's a cash cow. Yeah.
It is an absolute cash cow, which takes away from the raw beauty of it too.
Yeah.
But that's the way the game is going. Every other sport is becoming very commercialized too. I think the thing that we don't fully appreciate is the enormous honor that the opposition countries have from playing against the Lions. You know, they live for it too, and you know they're every 12 years. I forget the name of the Australian player. It's not Nathan Sharp. It was another lock who's played 107 times for Australia, and his first test for Australia was in 2002, and his last test was in 2012. And this is a huge regret of his.
Yeah.
So it is a very big deal to the Southern Hemisphere countries too.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not just us who have this emotional attachment to it. They do as well.
Yeah. I for whatever reason, I'm slightly less into it with each iteration. Don't know why. 09, unbelievable. 13, really liked it, really into it. 17, I've no reason why I would like the drawn series in New Zealand, but it was less so for some reason. And then the COVID one was just an abomination.
Yeah.
It's just so bad. And I didn't feel connected to even the Lions team.
You see, it's the videos after too that were a massive pull to people of bringing them in.
Yeah.
Now how we consume all digital media, you just get it every single day. So there's nothing new to draw you into it all.
Yeah.
And players are far more protective on camera than they might have been 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing the true
like if you watch the
depth of it.
Lions 97 now, I think most of the squad have been cancelled. Just so there's that aspect.
Locked up.
Yeah.
I do think it will pick up the closer we get to it and the more into the tour.
Well, they released a 20-minute behind the scenes, like Living with Lions, in effect, short documentary just the other day of the initial stages, and actually you got to see more of Andy Farrell than we've seen him on Netflix. Which was good, and you saw Sexton talking Marcus Smith through his run up. Now you run up at a straighter angle, so you got bits. So maybe you'll grow to get to know the team this time around. The other thing that sort of chips away at a touch is like you'd sort of back Ireland to go and beat Australia, or you'd back England to go and beat Australia. It doesn't quite feel like, my God, can the strength of these four countries come together to beat Australia? It's not quite the Everest you want it to be.
No,
And I can't, with this one, Irish contingent big, Farrell big, Sexton, a lot of ingredients that are nice. If they were now going to South Africa, I think, oh, this would be, I'd be ravenous for this. But Australia, I can't quite get too in awe of, as much as I'm sure Joe Schmidt's going to get them to be competitive.
No, the talent pool is not the same as it was 15, 20, 25 years ago. The Southern Hemisphere were streets ahead of the home unions here. So that's sort of
that made it
reversed a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so if the Lions lose a series to Australia, something's really wrong.
There is a you're on hiding to nothing here, Andy Farrell aspect of this.
Yeah.
Wins, he'll get, oh, well done. Loses, it'll be like, jeez.
How did you lose with that team?
Ah.
Then that's
the pressure.
The beauty of the Lions of bringing everyone together and creating a team, which is no mean feat.
Yeah. And do you think the Lions will win?
I think they will win, yeah. I think Australia will get one.
Right.
And
one of the first two or more of the third?
One of the first two, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
You take that.
And it would be great for the game. It would be great for Lions. It would be great for Australia. It would be great for rugby worldwide.
Yeah.
And it would be great for the tour. But Joe will have a plan, and he'll have them humming.
Very good. A lot of Irish starters.
There's a few who need to find a bit of form. You go, well, Ports will start, and Sheehan will start. Tig needs to find a bit of form, but he can get it quickly. We'll have someone in the lock, you'd have to think. Well, Jack looks nailed on at 8 now, doesn't he?
Yeah.
6 and 7, bit open.
It's a mad existence that Jack Conan's going to play like X number of Lions games in a row. And in the interim, it's just like, yeah, no, you're a backup. You're good and everything.
It's wild.
It's crazy.
Now, would Jack have been in the squad had Caelan been fit?
Yeah. So he's
there will be a heavy Irish contingent.
Very good.
But again, they've all got to
get going.
Get going.
Very good. Thanks so much for doing that.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's great. Enjoy the series. Might see what you make of it when it's all done, actually, in a month or something.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Come in and give us the view.
Yeah.
Rob Kearney, the autobiography, is still available in all good bookshops. Surely.
Shredders.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Rob Kearney. Enjoy the Lions and talk to you again soon.
You
Cheers.
too. Pleasure, my man.